We got Derrick Parker, the hip-hop cop in the building.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming through. So I want to get into your background story a little bit before you got to what you were known for in terms of being part of the quote-unquote hip-hop police.
Okay.
So you grew up in Brooklyn.
Grew up in Brooklyn, born and raised.
Mm-hmm. Then I guess you moved to Queens at one point.
Yes, I lived in Queens, Hollis, Queens.
And your dad was a cop.
Yes, he was a Marine and he was a cop, sanitation policeman.
Okay, what is a sanitation policeman?
They do enforcement of ECB laws, like littering, illegal dumping, things of that nature.
Okay, so nothing too serious.
No, nothing too serious.
Okay. What made you want to become a cop?
Well, my father was a Marine, and we had a lot of brothers and sisters. I think from the 2 marriages, my parents were married twice and divorced twice, we had about 10 children. So, my father stressed either the military, college, or you get a civil service job. And I think I took the college, but then I took the civil service job.
Okay, because you joined the police academy. I guess you were going to St. John's at one point?
I was at St. John's, yes.
And then you joined the police academy?
I joined the police academy.
Okay. And originally you were just doing regular street patrol stuff and
Yeah,
so
I started off as a beat cop walking the beat here in Times Square.
Okay. And then you were moved into undercover narcotics.
I was an undercover cop in narcotics division, yes.
Okay, so what really went into being an undercover narcotics cop?
Well, at that time, they were looking for minority officers to be more in the undercover field. It was interesting to me because it was something that was challenging, and I really wanted to do it, just to see how I was and see what it entailed. I really learned a lot because they sent me to the South Bronx, where everything was going on, and I definitely learned a lot back then. Being an undercover cop, buying drugs, not just small scale like street buys, but going in and doing big buys and with major drug dealers.
Okay, like what was the biggest amount you ever bought?
We used to get kilos of coke. I mean, myself, I bought maybe 1 or 2 kilos of coke, but there were guys in my unit that bought like 40, 50 kilos of consignment. Back then it was different, but we had a great team. We had a great team. It was good undercovers and a good team of investigators.
So how do you walk in off the street and say, hey, I want to buy some drugs from you, and I'm not a cop?
Well, back then in the South Bronx, drugs were so bad and so prevalent, they were just open. Everybody was selling everywhere. So it was really like a market. You could just walk in and buy from whoever back then. I mean, they would figure out sooner or later you were a cop, but if you fit description, they wouldn't know if you were a cop or not.
Okay, but how do you get to the point of actually buying kilos? Because at that point, I assume people are a little more paranoid.
Well, that you have to work up to. You have to be doing street buys for a while before you even graduate to doing stuff like that. But then, because that entails you wearing a wire, you're going really deep undercover, changing your name, your licenses, everything about you, carrying a nondescript gun. It's a whole different world then. And I was really different back then. I had a big afro with a big beard, an earring. So I looked like everybody else.
Okay, so you would go in, the police would give you a certain amount of money to buy your drugs,
Yes.
right?
Uh-huh.
You would go in and buy the drugs from the dealers, and you'd be wearing a wire the whole time.
On the big buys, yeah.
On the
You'd be
big
wearing a
buys.
wire, yeah.
Okay.
And that's just for your safety, for their safety, because sometimes you would buy these drugs, you don't know if a guy's going to try to stick you up. If he thinks you got money or thinks you got something, he might try to rob you.
So, in the midst of you being an undercover, drug officer, what was like the most serious situation you ever got into? Did you ever feel like you were going to get shot, robbed?
Well, one of the most difficult situations was I was buying a kilo of coke up in the Heights, Washington Heights, and the detective that was with me was a little nervous about going into an apartment with me, so I had to calm him down, like tell him to relax, because he could get us both killed, because we were dealing with guys that had heavy weight, Dominican guys at the time, and they had guns. When you go in an apartment, sometimes they search you or they put a gun to your head, just to check you out. And I told him this would happen. I mean, he never experienced this before, but he was very nervous, and I had been through it several times, but I told him to relax, like, just follow my lead, so this way, if anything happens, we know how to get out of there safe, where none of us get killed.
Okay, but if they're searching you when they find the wire?
No. Well, the way we did it was that we had it discreetly. Sometimes I might have it in a cigarette box. Maybe I'd have it in my ass. Not that far, but something in a pack, a fanny pack around that area.
Okay.
Where they wouldn't search you. And then most of the time, before you made a big buy like that, the dealers knew who you were because you had bought like 3 or 4 buys to buy up to the big amount, so they knew who you were. So
Okay.
they trusted you.
So you basically would go in, you'd wear a wire, you'd buy the drugs, and then a certain time afterwards, the police would go in and bust the guy,
Yeah.
and then you would testify against him in court?
Yeah, if we had to, unless the guy took a plea. If he took a plea, then you wouldn't, because if his attorney said, look, they got you dead to rights, you might as well take the plea, take the 15 years or whatever, they would just take it on an A1 felony weight.
Okay. Did you ever have to go to court and testify as an undercover?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Several times.
isn't your cover blown at that point?
Well, it is at the time when you're at a trial, yeah, it can get compromised. But by then, the guy who you bought from is already in jail or going to jail. If you're testifying, then there's a good chance that he's going to be convicted.
Okay. And you convicted a lot of people this way?
Yeah.
Hundreds?
Hundreds.
Hundreds of people. Okay. So at what point did the whole hip-hop thing start to kind of enter what you did?
Well, after I left narcotics, I went into Brooklyn, in East New York, Brooklyn, and I went into the 7-5 Detective Squad, the infamous squad that, in Brooklyn everybody heard about. I think when I first walked in, on the door, you give me 22 minutes and we'll give you a homicide. All my friends in the Bronx said, like, what did you do? Did you piss somebody off? Did you upset someone? Why are you going to Brooklyn? That's the worst place to go, worse than the Bronx.
So when you say give me 22 minutes and I'll give you a homicide, are they kind of implying false confessions or?
No, 10-10 wins. It was a statement from 10-10 wins. You give us 22 minutes, we'll give you the world.
Oh, okay.
But the saying in the 7-5 was you give us 22 minutes, we'll give you a homicide.
Okay.
And that's how East New York, Brooklyn was.
Yeah. East New York, Brooklyn.
At that time, in that year,
Yeah.
in the 90s.
Okay.
Late 80s, mid 80s or early 90s.
Okay. And what were you doing over there?
I was doing investigations. I was a detective in the squad. I had to wear a suit and tie. And I was investigating, different cases like burglaries, assaults, robberies. Well, it's not mostly robberies, sometimes robberies, and then homicides. I was one of the youngest detectives in the squad. And all the old timers told me to drive and order food.